Hey, Kirsten, thank you so much for joining me today on my little podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here again after we spoke socially last week. So
I know, lockdown wine chats, right?
yeah.
We hadn't done that for so long, and I can't believe we didn't do that sooner because I don't know, I just feel like I haven't connected with many people in lockdown, like properly. Even like on the telephone. Like there's been plenty of, I think, WhatsApps and things like that and on Facebook, but actual picking up the phone and calling people, I don't think people really do that as much these days.
No, I agree. But also, I mean, it is a nice example of how you can go for, your friends who you've had for a long time. It's very easy to pick up conversation from years before and it just be like yesterday. So that was nice.
Yeah, it was really good. Okay, I have introduced you as one of my oldest friends. I get my guests to tell me, to tell the audience a little bit about themselves. So would you like to just tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Like Mel, I've moved from New Zealand to Australia and have lived over here for about 20 years now, coming up to 21 years, I think, this September. My life looks a little bit different to yours. My partner, I've been with now for about 15 years, I think. He had lived in Japan prior to moving to Australia. So when we met, his extremely Japanese aesthetic, I think, has gradually rubbed off on me, to the point where I think that we try to live in a fairly considered way when it comes to possessions and what our home looks like and how that affects how we live our lives a little bit more widely. Yeah, I think as well, when I first moved to Australia, I was moving around in share houses quite a bit more. There was that whole thing of living basically in one bedroom or living in smaller places, and then sort of going through the whole thing of combining two households when my partner and I moved in together. Also, I had a period of 6 months in sort of 2017, 2018 over that summer where I went back to New Zealand and lived that life of walking a long trail. I walked to Araroa in New Zealand and essentially lived out of my backpack and a tent for 6 months. And that was actually a really interesting approach and mindset of how adaptable you can be to situations that you put yourself in, and how little I think you need to actually get by. The other thing as well, it's like survivalist cosplaying, I guess you'd call it. So.
That's such a good way, because you're forced to, basically, because you have to carry everything with you from one end of New Zealand to the other, literally. You really have to be very intentional with what you carry. I've never tried living out of a backpack before, and I have to admit, even when I went traveling around Europe, when I did my 6 weeks of Europe and went to London, stayed with my sister-in-law, I still had a suitcase. I didn't do the backpacker thing because I didn't have one of the backpacks, one of the travelers backpacks, and I didn't want to go and buy one just for that trip. So I did have an expanding suitcase, but I think I took way too much. And I had to actually borrow a suitcase from my sister-in-law when I went on the bus tour of Europe, because the suitcase I'd taken to London, because I was staying at London at both ends of my trip, and then in between I did one of those scenic bus tours. So I had to borrow a smaller suitcase from her because I just thought, no, there's no way. And I'm glad, because when we got to Europe, the hotel rooms, the lifts in Europe are so small and the rooms are so small that you really don't want to take a lot of stuff with you. So traveling, because you took all your cooking implements and stuff and all your sleeping gear as well, right?
Yeah. So I had tent and sleeping bag and little gas stove and gas cans, and sort of had to what you can cook, that nothing can be refrigerated, so everything has to be shelf stable, and water treatment as well. So
water treatment. Did you have to take like a whole pantry full of stuff, or did you stock up along the way?
Oh, you have to stock up along the way. I think the most that I carried was 10 days of food. That was pretty grim. How to actually put this? Gave me, I think, quite a good understanding of, there are sort of conversations around the way that poor people eat. There's sort of quite a popular argument at the moment for a sugar tax, that we should be sugar taxing soft drinks and soda. When I was I was hiking really long distances. I was just saying I didn't have access to a stove or an oven. I didn't have access to a refrigerator, really anywhere to store things from what I could carry. So everything sort of, it was the one time I've walked around the supermarket in my life picking things up and looking at how many kilojoules per 100 grams a food item had, and trying to find the maximum number of kilojoules, because you're physically working really hard. New Zealand's quite mountainous.
Yes, you need the energy.
Particularly in the South Island. So you're finding that, you were eating a lot of really, high carb things. A jar of peanut butter, I think, would last me for about 3 days, because, the fat and the protein in it, and of course it's very shelf stable. Some of the boys that I was walking with, because for men, they tend to lose condition a lot quicker. They lose body fat a lot quicker. Women actually have a real biological advantage over that. Our hormone profile actually helps us hold body fat a lot better in endurance events, which is why women are really, really good at them.
Oh.
And those sort of ultra endurance kind of physical pursuits. So quite a lot of the young would just carry like an empty soft drink bottle, like an empty Coke bottle with olive oil in it, and just be pouring olive oil into everything. It was disgusting. I don't know how they got it down.
Oh my God.
But and now to actually sort of come, and it's like, oh, well, it's like, well, why don't poor people eat better? And it's like, because I can tell you, I was starving, like I was doing physical work. You're often finding that people with limited job choices, they will quite often be doing jobs that involve a lot of time on their feet. So, retail, supermarket work, cleaning jobs, manual labor. I don't crave lentils and carrots when I'm frigging starving.
No, I don't think anybody does.
I had sugar cravings and just absolutely out of control. The thing that I really wanted when I got to town was actually post-mix Coca-Cola. And in my real life, I don't drink a lot of fizzy drinks or Coca-Cola. But that was the thing that I really wanted as soon as I got to town. So it had to be from the tap at the pub or the soft drink machine at McDonald's.
Oh, wow. It does taste
sweeter
than the soft drink in a bottle, doesn't it? Too, I think.
I don't know what it is, but it was specifically post-mix Coke that I wanted.
They must make it more addictive, so they sell more at the pub.
But definitely just in terms of going, everybody knows that the cheapest, easiest, best choice of beverage that you can consume is water out of the tap. So the idea that Coca-Cola is consumed more, there's definitely something else going on there. And it's a very, very middle class assumption to assume that everybody has access to a functioning kitchen and a refrigerator. So, and like muesli bars and Mealmates crackers and salami that had not been refrigerated and 2-minute noodles and lots of chocolate.
I suppose you've got to look at the weight of things as well.
Yeah, when I got to town, I would eat a lot of burgers, pancakes like with a fruit topping was a big thing for me, and salads. Obviously, I really, really craved a lot of fresh salads. And quite honestly, my skin had never looked better. I was glowing. I had the fresh complexion of a radiant 15-year-old girl. I don't know what was going on with that. But
So tell me about clothes, because obviously you can only carry so much. And then I don't know how often your breaks were that you'd get to a town and you could like do some laundry or something. Because from start to finish, like how long was the whole trek?
Look, I had a couple of breaks, about 2 weeks at a time, and I was in New Zealand for just under 6 months. So I was probably walking for almost 5 months of that. And generally laundry was something that got done once a week, maybe. I more or less I had two pairs of undies. And you can get these sort of microfiber underpants now that are marketed really to hikers, that they've got something sewn and, sort of manufactured into the fiber, so they are anti-stink and they're a very thin fabric, so they will rinse out and dry incredibly quickly. So those were relatively easy to wash out in water. I had 2 pairs of socks for walking in. So generally you would wear one pair until they got crunchy, and then you'd swap to the other pair and then try to wash out the other ones and dry them on the back of your pack. And then I just had possum fur socks for evening, and then rain gear, and then I had one long sleeve t-shirt and one short sleeve t-shirt, and yeah, that was about it. And I had a down puffy jacket as well.
Yeah.
And the only toiletries that I really had with me is I had a comb and I had a toothbrush and toothpaste, and I had some Wilderness Wash soap. I did get to a point where going into hostels, and they've generally got sort of like a combined body wash, shampoo kind of thing, and a dispenser on the showers, and it's not good. And I think I did actually cave in and buy a mini travel bottle of conditioner after a few months, as my hair was really like straw. It wasn't a good time. You did kind of get used to the way that you smelt. Everybody was very much the same. And also technical merino wool is generally the choice that everybody makes. So it does, how do I explain this? It does have a smell to it once you've been sweating in it for a few days, but at the same time, because everybody is, under physical exertion, nobody's drinking any alcohol, nobody's smoking or anything. You actually seem to burn quite clean, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I was sort of getting to the end and going, oh my God, I'm so looking forward to just getting to the end and throwing my disgusting clothes and my shoes that smell like mold and feet in the bin, and being a civilized person again and being able to buy some deodorant and wear my regular clothes, maybe put on some makeup again, it's like all those things that I kind of missed to a certain extent. And so this is what happened. I did take off my disgusting sweaty t-shirt that I'd been wearing for a week and put it in the washing machine and put on some regular clothes. And then I had to take a bus trip from Invercargill to Christchurch and suddenly be in close quarters with people who were regularly drinking alcohol and smoking and wearing that spray deodorant like body spray, and just being like,
it's quite pungent.
Civilization smells bad, like this chemical kind of wash coming over you, and it's just like, I'd just rather be sleeping next to a bunch of stinky deer hunters again. But it's very much what you get used to, and coming back to that point of can adapt incredibly quickly to situations that they put themselves in. I think a different story for situations have imposed on them, which is possibly why people are having such a hard time adapting to lockdown conditions.
Do you think it's changed the way you thought about stuff? I mean, I don't feel you have ever been particularly extravagant or an over consumer of stuff, but do you feel like it might have influenced even more the way you are with stuff?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like I did consume more when I was younger. Certainly with regards to clothes at this point, it's kind of having that understanding of what clothes are necessary for the life that I have. It's quite, as I was getting ready for this today, I was watching some of your other YouTube videos and you're decluttering your fantasy life one, which is just like, yeah, I've had a fantasy life, and a fantasy version of my head is somebody that, goes to, I don't know what I was thinking, do I go to movie premieres every weekend? It's like, no, I don't. I don't need a whole bunch of fancy party dresses. I, would really prefer to go and have a steak and a beer at the pub. And in that case, how many clothes do you really need? I've only got one body.
When we met, we were both working in corporate, and that's how we met at the happy hour drinks on Friday nights. Have we met? We've been friends ever since. It's been, 22 years? Can you believe?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And yet we haven't aged a day.
No, we haven't.
Right?
Yeah, we used to, I would probably buy more clothes then. And that was like my first full-time job where I earned like a decent income. And so you suddenly find yourself with the means to buy things. But I remember when I met you, I think you'd come out of a relationship and you're living by yourself. And I remember walking into your flat, and you weren't like, you didn't have tons of stuff. Like, you were fairly minimalist back then, I feel. But I don't know if that's just because you'd split up from your partner. And
that sounds about right. I think it was probably the first place that I'd had on my own as well. So it's probably the reason that I didn't have much stuff. I didn't have a lot of stuff. I think, the couch was a hand-me-down from my dad, and my wardrobe was just one sort of small closet. So, I mean, there wasn't. But I think we've all sort of got, definitely for me at that stage, physical books was something that I really tended to acquire a lot of. And when I moved to Australia, it's obviously books are incredibly heavy. And even now with Chris and myself, books are things that we tend to keep, and actually having to say to a removalist, we actually need 30 or 40 boxes for our books.
Really? I didn't realize you had that many. I can remember you having, mind you, it's probably you walked into a place where you lived was 2008 when you were in Melbourne. I don't think I ever went into your Sydney apartment. We used to meet up at places, and I don't remember you having a lot of stuff, but you were on your own then, I think, back in the first time I visited you in Melbourne. But I remember when you moved to Sydney, I remember you moving and you saying how incredibly expensive it was to ship stuff to Sydney from Wellington.
Yeah.
And so you're being quite conscious about what you took with you. I remember you saying that. That was like 20 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, 20 years ago. Yeah, that would be.
You're in Melbourne now, but you moved to Sydney a couple of years before I did. Yeah, and I remember you saying how expensive it was to ship stuff over. And I think you shipped a whole lot of kitchen stuff over, and I can't remember what else. So did you take all your books with you, or you do declutter them?
No, I didn't. I donated a lot of them to places like hospice and things like that. And some of them, I'd inherited from my dad, so dad got those back again as well.
Yeah, I think there's nothing that makes you declutter like moving house or moving country.
Yeah, especially. I know. It's really, I think for some people to walk into our house now, it would probably feel a lot more stark, I think, than maybe what a lot of people would be entirely comfortable with in sort of a homely environment. But at the same time, like we've just moved into state again, and it still seems like so much stuff in terms of going, what do we really need? It's like a bed to sleep in, maybe some entertainment. I mean, we both have e-readers these days, so I can download books. It's just like,
me too. So did you sell a lot of furniture and just rebuy stuff when you got back to Melbourne, or did you take
we had it all shipped down. So sort of talking about when we first met, we were both working in that corporate environment, and definitely it was kind of I think that slight environment of an office and working alongside a lot of other women who were in their early 20s and late night shopping on Lambton Quay, and it was a bit of a recreational thing of going to Glassons and buying outfits and I certainly
Sydney as well, because I remember when I visited you in Sydney, I first moved to Sydney again. I think you were still working in an office at that point. And I remember admiring some of the things that you were wearing to work and stuff. And I think you got me onto Review. I still shop there. Like I hardly ever buy stuff. Like I call myself the vintage review girl because I have stuff from there that's like 10 years old. But if I'm going to buy something like, for a special occasion or for corporate or, like a professional kind of thing, I would go back there to shop. So you're the fit one you got me on that, because I noticed a lot of your clothes were really pretty and I wanted to know where you got clothes from. So I remember you had such a beautiful wardrobe. I mean, you still do, but again, that was the time of life we're in. And I remember people in corporate, when you came to bonus payment time, you could tell who got, even though it was supposed to be secret, who got paid a bonus, who didn't. You could tell a lot of the people who did, because they'd come back at lunchtime with bags from their shopping sprees because they've spent their bonus already on clothes and crap. It was just the culture.
I've recently sort of come around that circle again because I'm now back in a fairly corporate job, and quite honestly, we have a uniform, and I really like that because it
so much easier.
Yeah, I know. It just, and I went to a state school in New Zealand where there was a compulsory uniform as well. And look, to be honest, I'm not really anti asking teenagers to wear a school uniform. I mean, I think that there should be options within that structure. And I think kids will always find, we'll always find ways to attach certain class signifiers to, it's like you have to wear black lace-up shoes, but who's got Doc Martens and who's got Clarks kind of thing. But at the same time, it does, I think, help remove some of those, like I said, those class signifiers, which can make things quite difficult. The uniform in the workplace as well, it's not restrictive in any way, so it's
Yeah, I think it just takes, well, with the kids, because my son wears a school uniform going to primary school. It's funny because in New Zealand, the primary schools, unless you got like a Catholic or private primary school, you don't really wear uniforms. So that was a new thing for me. My son going to primary school and having to use to wear a school uniform, like doesn't matter whether you're public, private, whatever. But it was good because I have to buy a lot less clothes for him now. Well, in lockdown, he's not wearing uniform, obviously, but sometimes in lockdown, we just wear pajamas to make it. And teachers don't care if he's wearing pajamas on Zoom call. Usually he gets dressed though. It's my daughter who's in pajamas. But yeah, I'm looking forward to her starting school next year because she'll be in school uniform and I won't need to buy as many clothes for her. It just takes that decision making out of it.
Yeah.
And then again, for adults, it was like Barack Obama. He used to wear blue suits and grey suits because he said he had so many other decisions to make that just took another micro decision off the plate. He didn't even have to think about that because you get decision fatigue from all the decisions you have to make every single day, every single week.
I think that's actually a really important as that so many decisions every that we have to make it every time. It's like you can't even go and get money out at the ATM. It's like, do you want a receipt or no receipt or print it on the screen? It's like these constant decisions that you're being asked to make it at every turn. It's actually very relaxing to not have to choose it. I mean, Chris and I, we also had a holiday in Europe a few years back, and as part of that we did a tour in the south of France. It was a walking tour, so we just sort of had our day pack and sort of walked among these beautiful sort of gorges, river gorges and medieval ruins and everything in the day, and at the end of the day we'd stay in a bed and breakfast, and it was all arranged on a prefix, like a price fix. And so what you got for dinner was what you got. And it was just, you never saw a menu, there's your food. And it was just like, I don't want to make decisions about this at the end of what's been quite a long day. And also you don't sort of have that whole thing of going, oh, did I make the right choice? Would that dish have been better? And it's just that being taken away was great.
I agree.
I
did the bus tour. It was so easy because they picked all the hotels and stuff, and there was limited options for your meals and stuff, but I didn't mind. I didn't care. I didn't want to have to worry about that kind of stuff. My biggest decision was what I'd want to see that day. They would take you to certain places, but then it wasn't like every single minute of every day was planned for you. You had options. We had free afternoons or whatever to go. Some people would go see one thing, other people would go another way, so there was some flexibility. But yeah, not having to like decide all those things, especially when you don't know the city and you don't know the food. And sometimes it was good to have a decision forced upon you, sort of force you to try something new as well.
Yeah.
That's what I liked about it. I'd love to go back. I don't know when we're going to get to go back.
Yeah.
Now, but yeah, maybe when the kids are older. But yeah, because I've still got my sister-in-law and her family are in London. So that would be really cool to go and stay with them and then do some little trips from there. But yeah, I think experiences is one of the key reasons I think why minimalism is so beneficial. I mean, you've moved around so much, even when you were in Sydney for the amount of time that you were. I mean, you've went to Melbourne in that time, then you came back to Sydney, now you've come back to Melbourne. And like you said, at the beginning, you were in share houses, so you only had one room. But then, of course, if you needed to move flats, whatever, if the flat broke up and you needed to like find another place, and then for a while in your own place, moving around, that kind of thing, it's so much more flexible. I think if people think, oh, what if I got a job overseas or in a different city, I'd have to pack up my whole house. And it's a big source of stress for people because they just think, oh, it's such a monumental task and so expensive. But I think the less you keep and the simpler you keep things. I mean, even my house, I still think there's too much stuff. And it's merely because I've got 2 kids and a husband who's not a minimalist. I've got less clothes in the closet than my husband does because he just doesn't throw anything out.
Well, that's something that kind of comes up for us every now and again. Obviously, my partner's American and I'm from New Zealand. And I think to a certain extent, we're both very open to the idea of living in New Zealand at some point. And in terms of taking the things that we've got, there's sentimental items and things that I think that we're trying to hang on to, but we're actually quite fortunate in the position that the possessions that we have, a lot of them we could let go and it would be easier to source again. I mean, there's just 2 of us and the cats. We don't really need that much space. So it's not like we'd be moving into a gigantic 4-bedroom home and then have to furnish it from scratch. Like, we're actually very happy in a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. We're kind of lucky where we are now that we have 2 bedrooms, but we were in a 1-bedroom place for 10 years.
Yeah, I like living in, my house isn't huge, and I like the fact that it's easy. So we just got interrupted. My son started printing something off for his remote schooling, so I had to pause in the middle of that, and I can't remember we were talking about moving, and
and you were talking about the fact that you don't mind that your place is a bit smaller because it's easier to
yes, because I'm the one that has to clean it and tidy it. And I used to pay for a cleaner even in a 2-bedroom apartment when I was working full-time, and I just remember I used to run around the night before trying to tidy up and move stuff out of her way because we had so much crap. And my husband would say to me, why are you cleaning before cleaning? And I said, well, her job is to clean. Her job is not to pick up after us and move stuff out of the way so she can clean. So make it easier for her to actually do the job that she's paid to do. But now that I've got less stuff, like, I feel like a cleaner is not a waste of money, but I feel like it's manageable enough. I can do it myself. And in lockdown, I don't particularly, during a pandemic, I don't particularly want someone else coming into my home if I can help it. Some of my friends are happy to still have the cleaner come in, and to them it's a real treat to have to come home from work or have someone come in and make their house nice for them every week or every 2 weeks. But for me, it's not. I think I'd rather have someone who cooked my meals and clean for me. Cook my meals for the week. The other thing I like is that I feel like, hopefully this will never happen, but if your house burnt to the ground, I feel like hopefully there wouldn't be too many things that I'd regret, that I'd miss. So photos are the one thing I need to sort out, because I still have a ton of printed photos from birth until about the early 2000s that I need to sort out. But once I get those scanned and into cloud storage, apart from maybe 1 or 2 sentimental things and documents like passports, there's nothing that I think I would really miss if I didn't have it anymore. And that's kind of a nice feeling to have, actually feeling like you're not bound to your stuff. And I don't know if it's an age thing. Do you think as you get older you feel like you're more inclined to treasure experiences over things? Because I feel like as I get older, that's a thing for me, although some people as they get older they become more hoarders.
Yeah, I think, look, I've very much had the advantage of always having been pretty solidly middle class. So I don't feel a huge compulsion to hang on to things just in case. I am in a position to be able to say, well, things come and things go, and it's just stuff. It's replaceable. But like I said, I'm in a position where I can actually have that luxury of being able to fairly easily replace things when I need to. In terms of the experiences rather than things, yes, to a certain extent. Once again, it's like we should probably acknowledge that we are in a minority of people have, up until recent border closures and travel bans, had the advantage of being able to move across borders freely and safely, and that disposable income for travel is something that we both have. So taking the experiences over things as a morally more pure sort of approach to life, I do feel a bit odd about saying that, but I think ethics and an understanding of what is important to you and relationships, I think, are the 2 things. And look,
yes, people.
I am not a perfect person in terms of maintaining my relationships either, and I would like to say that I would, but I kind of feel that friendships, to a certain extent, they do take active work. I'm not anti-social media, but I do think that we are seeing an increase in people, rather than having a conversation like this, just kind of using their Facebook account to emote into the void, and then the feedback from that is like a heart react. I mean, I don't know. It's
not the same.
It's absolutely not the same. And I think it actually leads to much more uncertainty in our interactions with people. I'm on Facebook. I don't necessarily think it's a terrible thing, but I think you need to realise that we are the product on Facebook. And I mean, I've got friends and family.
Yeah, our attention is the product.
And I've got friends, over in the US and in Europe, and it's just a really efficient way to keep across what is going on in people's lives. And I like seeing what's going, it's like I like seeing their kids' birthday parties, and I like seeing their catch up with friends, and, their travel experiences and their job promotions and all their things that they're really excited about. And that's nice to have that very easy window into their lives. But at the same time, it can become a superficial way of contact. And I think, when I went over to New Zealand, I was just like, oh, this idea of actually being without reception, for days at a time, it's going to be so peaceful to just disconnect. It's just really, really ready to disconnect. And then what you actually find, sorry, that's my partner coming home now, is that you're not trying to disconnect, you're actually trying to find a better connection.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I have to admit, I don't post a lot of personal stuff on Facebook and as many photos now. The reason why I initially wanted to keep in contact with people on Facebook is because I got sick of losing track of when people changed their email addresses. It's like, I guess, a phone book, but it's virtual. So if I want to update someone, a lot of my action on Facebook goes on in messaging with close personal contacts. Because I'm more like, I think because I use Facebook for my business, I'm on there more often. So I'm more likely to do like a private message to my friends on Facebook than do like a private text message to them. Some of them I'm on WhatsApp with, but I don't really like doing like massive life updates in bulk on Facebook. I've never really been into that. Maybe when there was like a wedding or a birth of a child or something like that, but not we're on holiday or whatever. Actually, I was very conscious not to post when we were on holiday in case someone robbed our house. We're away. To me, that's just common sense. Even though it's private forum, you just don't know who's watching, right? And I agree with the experience over things. There is a certain privilege that we have that allows us to be able to think that way. And I acknowledge, definitely there's some people who don't have those benefits. But then I feel like even people on lower income sometimes can value things a little too much, and they might spend money on things that they don't necessarily need or want. I think that's just human beings as consumers. We're sort of programmed to sort of want things and to consume. And it's very easy to get sucked in by marketing and advertising and comparisonitis and feel like we need things that we don't necessarily need, if you know what I mean. Everyone's susceptible to it, I guess, is what I'm saying.
No, that's true. Like even in the backpacking community, it's sort of like the eternal, the biggest dick is equivalent to the lightest backpack. It's like the more you can sort of pull, sort of absolutely reduce things down. It's like, oh my God, he's only got a 3.5 kilo base weight. That's amazing. So it's like minimalism taken to its extreme, but it can also be really consumerist and competitive in terms of who's using what and
what brand of gear.
Absolutely. It's really
that happens with all sports and hobbies and things, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And I think it's kind of I'm probably being a bit sexist here, but I think it's kind of a guy thing too, because a lot of guys are into like the gadgets and the brands of certain sports and hobby gear. I think I am definitely being sexist here, but I know my husband's like that. He'll like, even when we went to buy a pram for our first child, he wanted the one that had the fancy suspension. It had all these different functions, not necessarily the brand name, but what it can do, like all the functions and the mechanisms. And did he change the suspension on our pram the whole time we had it? No, he just wanted it for the fact that you could do that. So I think, it's that thing of I want to have the best thing that does all the things, and they don't necessarily always use all of those functions.
And again, that I think comes down to that decision fatigue. Is like there is really so much choice out there. You can exhaust yourself trying to make the best possible purchasing decision, when actually a lot of the time just what is in your budget and available to you is probably fine. If you're looking at sort of 300 count, pure Egyptian cotton versus linen bed sheet. I mean, in the end, is one going to make you sleep better than the other? No.
And that's why I like to ask other people that I know how they've found something when I go to make a big purchase like that. What have you actually used? What is actually useful? And do you actually need this? Do you actually end up using this feature? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, oh, it's just a nice to have. We don't actually bother using that extra feature. So you might as well just get the more basic or mid-range model, of whatever it is. Yeah, my husband's definitely a sucker for, it can do this, that can do this. So different types of items have different levels of importance to people. What's sort of one category of item that you really value and that you would make sure is really good quality, or it's something that you will always like to buy? For me, it's notebooks. I don't necessarily go and buy expensive notebooks, but it's something I won't scrimp on. If I want a new notebook to journal in, I'll buy it and I'll use it. It's something I use. It's functional. I've got probably about 10 notebooks that are sitting there waiting to be journaled in, and I will use them. I just know that I can't buy any more till I started using up those ones. But is there something that you naturally always buy a lot of, or is something that's a must-have item for you to own?
I'm not a high heels girl, so I really don't mind spending decent money on a really good pair of flat leather boots. They're just a flat leather ankle boot. I've had those for, say, a good 12 years now. It's like I wear them anytime that I'm not at work. So that's something for the right clothing items. And yes.
Yeah, and it's an investment too.
Yeah.
Saving money. I had a pair of boots that I owned for about 15 years, and I think I had them resold about 3 or 4 times before I finally gave them up.
Yeah. I do own a very expensive leather jacket. I was quite excited when I moved back to Melbourne and actually realizing the weather is actually cold enough for a solid 3 or 4 months of the year to actually wear my extremely nice leather jacket. I think it makes me cooler as a human being.
I think I remember that jacket. You've had that for a long time.
No, this is a different one. Yeah, this is a different one that I bought in New York. And not only is it a very cool leather jacket, when people say, oh, I really like your leather jacket, I can say, yeah, thanks, I got it in New York.
That's your flex.
Yeah, I know it is. And then, I mean, I think the obvious answer, given other things we've spoken about today, is my outdoors gear. And that's to do with the fact that, unfortunately, because I'm limited to a 5-kilometre radius at the moment, is that I don't have access to that very important part of my general self-care, but I very much value being able to just throw my things in a backpack and leave the city limits for a night and just sleep somewhere else. And it's kind of like, well, yes, I know that my tent, it seems like it costs a lot of money, but it's like 5 nights in a hotel room. So the number of nights that I slept in it, really.
It's cost per use. I always say cost per use with anything.
Cost per use. And I mean also, and this is a very real justification as well, is that I am dependent on that gear for my physical safety as well. So I do have to be able to trust it to not leak rain, or if I get a cold snap to not be cold. I have a PLB with me, so it's for the really remote stuff. So that's all something that is relatively, because it's what I love doing. I mean, that's my happy place, and so that's the stuff I'm prepared to spend my tax return on to facilitate that. But I'm at a point now where some of my stuff has had some pretty hard use and is probably getting towards the edge of actually genuinely needing to be replaced just out of wear. But on the whole, it's kind of like, I think I'm pretty set. That's kind of my thing. Like some girls, their thing is like crochet, or sort of like crafts, or makeup is a really sort of nice, harmless method of creativity and self-expression for some women as well. And so you kind of want to see what's coming out and what's new and what other people are using and how they use it. But just trying to go, no, that's okay. I actually have plenty at the moment. I don't need to go.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm trying to get in the habit of using up what I've got before I accumulate more. And I think living in a house where there's limited built-in storage, and I always say with people, usually they've got a stuff problem, not a storage problem.
Yeah, no, we're a bit, everybody's got a cupboard of shame or a drawer of shame somewhere. It's like, I don't know what to do with that, so we just put it on the side.
All right, are you ready for the lightning round?
I was born ready.
All right, question number 1, morning person or night owl?
Morning person.
Favorite junk food?
Hot chips.
Oh, me too. Snap. Oh, that's why we're best friends. Favorite family game or pastime?
Pictionary.
Oh, I love Pictionary.
Yes, yeah.
We never have enough people to play it.
Yeah.
Until my 5-year-old becomes old enough to really understand how to do it properly. It's a bit hard. Number 4, bucket list travel location.
Mongolia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's what I haven't heard people say before.
Yeah. No, I
cool.
think, what I've seen of it, it looks incredibly beautiful and wild. And I think I would love it.
They'd have some awesome places to like hike as well.
Yeah,
that'll be amazing. I can see you going there. Number 5, pen and paper or digital?
Pen and paper.
Yeah, everyone I ask says that. And I'm pen and paper too, so that's no surprise. Number 6, what's a great documentary or movie that you've recently watched?
Oh, okay. I'm going to say 2. My favorite documentary that I've watched in recent years is Losing Sight of Shore, which is the first rowing crew to row across the Pacific, and it was 4 British women.
Oh, wow.
And it's beautifully shot. So like just these amazing shots of the Pacific Ocean, but it's very interesting in terms of the psychological challenge of that extreme isolation, and also living in extreme close quarters as well, being 4 women on an ocean-going rowing boat. It's really intense, but it's incredibly uplifting as well. That's a really good one if you can hunt it down and watch it. I ended up messaging the director on Facebook after I watched it. This is amazing, and I feel like it might change my life having watched it. And a movie that I've watched recently and really enjoyed was Captain Fantastic, which came out a few years ago. And I'm usually somebody like, I'm really into the junk food of movies. Like I really enjoy, Michael Bay and Jerry Bruckheimer and all of the Marvel movies. That's really my jam. And I should probably at some point try and watch all the Fast and Furious movies as well, because I think that's also something that I really enjoy. And Captain Fantastic, it's a much more art house style movie. It's very subtly political and also sort of deals with processing of grief and loss. Look, I will admit that I watched it because Viggo Mortensen, who plays Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, which I'm also a huge fan of those movies, he plays the main character in it, Ben, and it's a real shift away from, I guess, that sort of playing this kind of epic hero kind of thing, of actually something that actually suits him as an actor a lot better. He's a very filmic actor. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was awesome, but it was quite a serious film.
Oh, I have to look that up. Actually, it's funny. We just started subscribing just month on month to Disney Plus because of lockdown, and something different for the kids to watch. And my husband and I just started watching the last 3 Star Wars movies. I think we saw one of them, was it The Force Awakens, and then we hadn't seen the last 2, so we've got one more to watch. And then I started watching some of the Marvel movies because I don't think I've usually been a huge Marvel fan, but I really enjoyed Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And then I just watched, actually last night, I watched the 2 Thor movies back to back. I just binge watched them because I had such a full-on weekend just doing work. I just needed a release. And I watched the first one. I was like, oh, what the heck? I'll watch the second one as well. Yeah. And so now I'm like, oh, but now I want to watch them in order. And on Disney Plus, there's a playlist where you can, it tells you the order, so you can watch them in order. Because I watched the 2 Thor movies, and in between something had happened which they referred to in the second movie, and I'm like, oh, I've got to go back and watch now. So I'm watching them in the proper timeline so I can understand the references throughout the different movies. Right. It annoys me that they do that though, because it's like, it's confusing. Number 7, if you could only take 3 items with you to a desert island besides your loved ones, of course, including cats, what would you take? So what 3 actual items?
That depends on whether they're survival items or just, things that I would really want to keep, to have.
Oh, that's a shame. Survival's okay.
Survival's okay. In that case, I am going to say I would take my e-reader for books.
And hope the battery lasts a
Really,
long time.
yeah, exactly. It's shameful, but I do have the replica of the sword from Lord of the Rings. Like I think I would really want to take that with me. I think it would be handy. I think it'd be handy for self-defense as well. I don't know. And
so it's not like a plastic version.
No, it's a full-on sort of steel, inlaid with gold.
Where was I when they were giving those out?
And tarot cards. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
I would take a deck of tarot cards. Yeah.
I didn't know you pulled tarot cards and read them.
No, I don't really, but I do love them just as objects. And that I find them satisfying to play with and look at the designs and everything. I can't really read them.
Be cool if you could. I'd be having that for reading. That's really cool. All right, what's a fun fact about you that people don't know, or that even I might not know?
I'm really into planes.
Really?
I'm really into planes.
Yeah, Chris was like, what?
Yeah, and no, he knows this. I'm really in an aircraft museum. I love it. Like there's this whole fascinating history around women pilots and how, again, there's no reason why there is such a huge gender split amongst particularly commercial airline pilots or anything else. Like, women are good pilots and have been doing it for a long time.
Women are good drivers in general.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, also they did quite a lot of, the initial space program, the doctor, the physician who put together all the aptitude testing for going into space, because only men were admitted, just went, just as a fun side experiment to do for my own curiosity, I'll put some women through the same test. Found a lot of women civilian pilots, and they actually were better than the men in a lot of concepts. But, Congress held a special hearing on it, and some of the women went to the US Congress when the initial space program was being decided to argue for their rights to be included. And the response is just that men being astronauts is just part of our natural social order.
Wow.
So yeah, there were women back in the 60s who did not get the opportunity to go to space, just so that less qualified men were able to go, because that's just the way it is.
Does this mean you'll be taking flying lessons one day?
I would absolutely love to get my light aircraft pilot's license. But it's expensive.
That'll be cool. I'll drive you in the car and you can drive me in the plane. And when we go on an amazing race together, we'll be a force to be reckoned with.
I know, yeah, I definitely still need to do that. But yes, no, I'm really into planes. I really love aircraft.
I did not know that.
Stories about women pilots and all the rest of it. So yeah,
I do love the story. Well, I don't love it because it didn't have a good ending, but yeah, Amelia Earhart, I did a project on her when I was in school, I think middle school, and I was fascinated with her. She's a
fascinating person.
Yeah, definitely. Just so determined. Question 9, what's the best advice you've ever been given?
I think the big one is to let go of what other people get. This idea that it's sometimes easy to look at people receiving advantages that you think, oh, well, I work just as hard, why don't I get that kind of thing? It's actually really a recipe for misery to become overly focused on feeling like you deserve the same things that other people are getting, whether a pay rise or a hotter partner or anything. It's just let it go. Yeah, it sounds like a really simple, nothing piece of advice, but at the same time, it is something that, every now and again when I find myself probably being a bit petty and small-minded, it's just something that brings me quite a lot of mental peace, actually, to sort of go, it's none of your business what other people get.
Yes, it's none
just
of
let
your,
it go.
it's also, it's none of your business what other people think of you and things like that as well. And it's definitely not nothing piece of advice. It's something I harp on a lot about how comparisonitis keeps us stuck in this cycle of the grass is always green, or wanting what other people have, and then we'll end up spending money on things that we don't end up loving or using. So it's something that I talk about time and time again, especially on this podcast actually. So definitely, I agree with that. All right, and this is a fun question, last question. If a movie was made about your life, who would you choose to play you?
That's a really good question, actually. And
not necessarily just in terms of physical appearance, but in terms of like attitude and energy and
I kind of want to say Reese Witherspoon, actually.
I remember that movie. Was it Wild?
Like towards that, but she's very. She seems like a very pragmatic person and extremely smart. And some of her early acting was, sort of pre Legally Blonde and everything, like her early acting that she did when she was around 16, 17. She's got huge range as an actor, and she's funny as well. I like to think that I've got range as well.
Well, she's a formidable force bundled into this little package, and you're the same. You're quite petite, but you're a force to be reckoned with, I reckon. I mean, look at the amazing things you've done. I mean, you've trekked from one end of New Zealand to the other pretty much by yourself. I mean, you met other people along the way, but you did it by yourself. You've done Oxfam in Sydney twice. I mean, you've done some amazing things. So you'd need someone pretty amazing to play you. I think that's a good choice. Oh, thank you so much. It's been so good. I don't know why we haven't done this sooner. And it's funny because it was only when we were chatting last week having a wine, I was like, actually, I do realize that you're quite minimalist when it comes to things, and you've got some great stories to tell. So interesting just hearing about your trek. I mean, I know we've talked about it before, but the amount of depth you went into in this session was just amazing. I've learned so much more, and I have so much renewed respect for what you've achieved and what you've done. It's been amazing. I'm so proud to call you my friend, and just so chuffed that you would come on the podcast with me. It just goes to show, if you put your mind to it, you can do some amazing things.
And I also say, now that it's my turn to give you a compliment, is that I think it's been really awesome that you had a pretty safe corporate career and you turned around and sort of gone out to start your own business and then do creative things in terms of media as well. I think that's actually a really awesome thing to do. I'm being really ageist here, but we're the same age, so that's okay. Is that I know a lot of people in their 20s who do it, sort of have sort of business ideas, or they want to work in media. But I think it's actually it's less usual for somebody who's had, like I said, a safe career and has made a nice life out of making safe choices, to actually say, no, I actually really want to give something else a go. And I'm really glad to see that you have lots of subscribers on your YouTube channel and that you're doing well in your business. Awesome.
Oh, thanks, honey. Well, I think minimalism has helped, because, as I always say, when you sort of get rid of the things that aren't so important, it becomes more apparent what is important in your life, and what you want your purpose to be and what you want to focus on. And we've only got one chance at this life, and it's short, so you've got to make the most of it. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me.